are. So today, welcome to Amato Media. I'm Ryan Amato. Today we're talking to Walter Stoffel. Walter is a freelance writer and publisher who specializes in human interest memoirs and fiction. He is the chief executive officer at Diamond One Publications. He has taught GED and substance abuse counseling at correctional facilities, which is awesome. He also has experience as a certified mental health screener. His books, Lance, A Spirit Unbroken, and Arthur, The Beginning, are available on Amazon. And I'm going to put the links up in this podcast below so everybody can go on there and take a look at them. Welcome, Walter.
Well, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming in today. So we're just going to go through a general chit chat, and we want to tell the world about you and your story. So can you tell me about yourself?
Okay. I was very young when I was a child. How's that for a bad joke to start it right off?
Beautiful.
I grew up in a small town, Port Jefferson on Long Island. Let's just say I am a child of the 50s. Family of 5, a lot of dysfunction, which I've kind of snuck into my second historical fiction novel. But despite that dysfunction, I did graduate with cum laude honors from high school. And I also graduated C.W. Post College in Long Island. Get this, my major was Spanish, my minor was psychology.
Wow.
Don't even ask. I may be the sole person on this globe that has that combo. My work history has been varied. I've been a high school teacher, real estate salesman, a lot of years as a drug and alcohol counselor. And actually, several years I was selling electronics in various South American countries.
Oh, wow.
Now,
go ahead, Walter. I'm sorry.
Throughout all of this time, I was what I like to call an accomplished underachiever. In that, I'm saying that I started books, never finished, wrote some music, wrote ad campaigns, wrote slogans for bumper stickers. The one thing they all had in common was none of them were ever seen by the public. I think it's a combination of insecurity and, frankly, laziness. I never followed through. So 10 years ago, July of 2010, I'm sitting in my house drinking a cup of coffee, and I'm saying to myself, Self, you're not getting any younger. You have to do something creative that you can leave behind. So with that in mind, by the way, am I interfering with the interview or?
Absolutely. No, go ahead. Speak away.
Okay.
You're doing my job for me. I appreciate that.
Okay.
You're good.
So I grabbed legal pad, pencil, and pen in hand, went out on my porch. I decided that my best bet was writing a book. So what am I going to write about? I couldn't think of a lot of things, and on every short list, a dog I had rescued came to mind because it turned out to be a very unusual experience, and it was fairly recent. He had died a year earlier, so it was fresh in my mind. I started writing. I would write a chapter, I'd write another chapter. Before I knew it, I was up to 8 or 9 chapters. And every time I wrote one, I figured, well, I'm just about at the end of the book. I'd bring it out to my wife, say, here it is. This is the final chapter. And she would say, oh, it's wonderful, you know. Well, it turns out that's not the way it works. I Googled how to write a best-selling novel. So there were a couple of things that they mentioned. One of the most important thing they mentioned was join a critiquing group. I checked around. Turned out there was one in a nearby library. And lo and behold, I gave them a call, and they told me what the rules were, the guidelines. Every 2 weeks we meet. You have to bring in a 15 or so page, double-spaced pages of your work, and everybody goes over it with a fine-tooth comb and critiques it. So I have long had a history of really taking the easy way out of things. Not good with criticism, just all kinds of things that I was just so far, by now I'm so far out of my comfort zone, I'd need a map to get back to it, and I don't even want to go back to it, frankly. So what
Well,
you and
now
I are doing now is just all part of this.
I
It
don't.
was,
Do,
go
do,
ahead.
do you realize? I mean, I'm just listening to you. How amazing this sounds. So you went from never written a book.
Right.
You were writing, but weren't putting it out to anybody until one day you just woke up and decided I'm going to write a book, and you Googled it, and now you're into a critiquing group.
I, so So yeah, and what you had to do was a couple of days before they meet, you have to email them your pages so they can correct it and give you the hard copy. So that Saturday, that first meeting, I am sitting out of my car sweating bullets outside the library, and this is like a do or die thing. So somehow my feet dragged the rest of me into there. And then I was waiting with my lack of self-confidence. I was waiting for people to say, oh, here's Walter, the guy that doesn't know how to write, or this, that. You know, everybody was just chit-chatting and stuff. And thank God that they took mine first, so I didn't have to sit there and wait for them to go through everybody else's. And I think 5 or 6 people were there. Every one of them was really angry at about how this dog had been treated by his previous owner. And I'm sitting there saying, wow, I put something down on paper and it's actually getting a reaction. So, I mean, that was a huge day. And, you know, I got into that. Actually,
How did you react? I'm sure you did get some critique in there.
oh, yeah, well, here's the thing. Which as I mentioned before, I have thin skin when it comes to criticism, because I grew up in a house where like you never wanted to be a failure. So the safest thing, my 2 sisters were overachievers. I took the easy way out. I said, well, hey, if I don't try anything, then I can't fail. But now that I look back on it, not trying in it is a huge failure in itself, you know. But that's stuff you live and learn. The first few weeks, it was like I took everybody's criticism and whatever they said to change, I changed and this and that. But after I got my feet a little wet, I would go home with everything that they've done and I'd look at it. And I'd say to myself, yeah, they're right. I'm going to change it the way they want me to. Other times I say, no, you know, I like it the way I did it. And sometimes I'd go in a third direction, not what they told me to do, but I didn't leave it the way I did it. I went off into a different direction. So I just got better at, you know, I would tell you that today, if I walk into a critiquing group, there's still that little bit of anxiety, etc. But it's not stopping me. That's really what all that matters.
And it's the same. It's the same for myself. I guess I used to be thick-skinned, and you know, I'm just putting myself out there on video. So I mean, you get all kinds of crazy comments from people who are just out there to be negative.
Oh yeah.
I had to realize that, and just you basically feel sorry for them, not try to change everything I do for what they're looking for. But how did you get into writing before this? Can we go backwards?
All through, excuse me, all through my life, I would start. I think I went to one creative writing class as a postgraduate, and that was it as far as school goes. I would just write things. I'd put them away. Some of them are probably still out in the garage. It just was. Let me just have a glass of water here before I.
Sure.
So it wasn't really, it was just something that was in me, but that I never brought to any completion. So I would just, I mean, actually I had some music I wrote that I actually completed the tunes. Never got around to doing anything with it. As I said, and I had all these ad campaigns, great bumper sticker slogans. I was going to, you know, but we've moved several times over the years, and I'm sure a lot of it got lost in, hey, do you really want this? Nah, throw it out, So I never really formally, it's just something that I did on my own, but I just didn't have, as I said, I think it was a combination of lack of confidence and just not willing to see it through.
Mm-hmm.
So everything I started kind of died a natural death.
And not a lot of support when you were younger.
So, actually, a couple of months ago, I gave a presentation. Oh, this is another thing I forgot to mention. I have a history of chronic anxiety and panic attacks. So,
join our club here.
Okay,
Walter. Almost everybody that I've interviewed so far, who is in business, or everybody who works here in my company, has anxiety and panic attacks, and we all kind of talk to each other about it and try to work through it, and so we definitely understand. You're not alone.
Well, you know what? And I'm not sure why it happened, but I haven't had a panic attack since about the year 2000. And I used to take meds. I don't take meds anymore either. So awesome. I don't know what it is. I can't sit here and say I have the answer to it. But I was going to say that a couple of months ago, I gave a presentation to all the high school English classes describing my writing journey with all the setbacks that I had along the way, that the old Walter would have just chucked it, bailed out. I had my computer crash, and I called somebody from the Geek Squad called me. He said, well, from what you told me, you probably lost everything. So I didn't keep any hard copy. I was probably about 2/3 of the way through the book.
Oh, wow.
I went berserk. So I did take the computer down to Best Buy, and the guy there said, I don't know why that guy told you that. I'm pretty sure we can save everything, which they did. And I was introduced to the joys of a flash drive.
Yeah.
See, things I hadn't thought of.
I think I have mine here somewhere.
Another thing. There's something called a query letter that you send to literary agents. It's like this little short paragraph that's going to convince them that they should represent you in your book. So I never got any bites. I did get, I'll share a story with this. It's a nibble I got it was funny in hindsight. So I send this letter out, and I was doing research, and I found this agent that she's also into dog rescue. So I said, oh, here we go. So I send it to her on a Friday, and she emails me back, I'm leaving the office. I will be definitely contacting you Monday. So I told my wife, here we go, man. The gravy train has arrived, So Monday comes, and Monday goes. So then I'm telling myself, maybe she kind of really meant the following Monday, not next Monday, the Monday after that. So now the following Monday comes and goes. So nothing. A month goes by. Now the deal is you are not supposed to contact agents without their permission. They're a very flaky crew. So I figured I'd try something funny. So I emailed her and I said, well, my wife's really concerned because I haven't gone to work for a month because I've been sitting by the phone waiting for your call. See, you're laughing, right?
Yes.
Well, she didn't respond.
Oh.
Another month goes by. And I'm saying to myself, I shouldn't really be so selfish. Maybe something terrible happened to this agent, and that's the only logical reason she hasn't gotten back at all. So I go on her Twitter account. 6 minutes earlier, she's posting, I'm in Brooklyn at a Starbucks having a Frappuccino. So obviously she had lost interest in me for some reason. So these are setbacks that, as I said, the old Walter would have, okay, that's it. We're not going any further. Why humiliate myself, What I finally realized, and if there's something that I can relate to anybody else that's seen this video, it's probably something that will save them time. In this competitive market of books these days, an agent and a big name publisher is only going to take you if either you're already established as a writer, you're a celebrity, or some will take you if you're young and they think they can build a long-term working relationship with you. So I read the writing on the wall and I self-published, which is
Right.
that's a whole other story in itself.
That's actually that's actually one of my questions is how do you self-publish? I've been thinking about doing that myself. I am not a writer, but I do have a lot of thoughts and I have a lot of experience. So what would you say to somebody like me who's never written a book? And well, you've done the same thing. I want to sit down. I want to wake up tomorrow. And I'm going to write a book and publish it.
Well, let me ask you this: what would you write your book on?
Well, that's a good question.
Okay.
Right. I think my life has had a bunch of different curves and angles and different reincarnations of itself.
Ryan, let me. Does the company Diamond Publishing International sound pretty impressive?
Yes.
Well, guess what? It's the second bedroom in my log home. I kid you not. It's me. It's me.
I love it.
I gave a presentation at it was a book fair, and a lady said, "I have a book that's almost done. Would your publishing company be willing to take me, under your wing?" I said, "I couldn't do that to you, because really, I just formed a company so that I could publish my books.
Mm-hmm.
And you might wind up doing the same thing. Doesn't cost much, but then again, publishing does cost a lot. And when I say that, I mean I went into it completely knowing nothing. By the way, if you ever do decide to take those steps, please do get in touch with me, because I can save you a lot of money along the way from what I've learned.
Oh, I appreciate it, I'm sure.
I hired a consultant. Everybody said get a consultant, so I went to a writers group. The Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group had a week-long seminar, and the lady, I went into her presentation. She said, "Before we get started, I'm going to tell you there's no breaks. I have too much information to give you." I was impressed. So impressed, I took her card and I hired her. And she's been worth it, but she charges $60 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a 15-minute conversation with her on the phone, I'm getting a bill for $15 somewhere in the next week.
Like a lawyer.
She thinks of big things. She thinks of little things that, when I say, why am I paying this kind of money? But I would have never thought of these things. That's why I'm paying her this money. Now, what's happened is the last 2 or 3 years, I may have spent maybe 2 hours with her, because I'm learning more in myself and learning how to get answers without having to use her. This isn't a knock on her, but, I got to protect my bank account. Mm-hmm. The other thing, book design. Again, I don't know. I have no idea about book design, so I had to hire a book designer, and actually a separate one to design the covers of the book. So you do run into, it's an investment. If you asked me, is it worth it? For me, it's really worth it, simply because of the fringe benefits I get. Personal ones, the fact that I'm sitting here with 2 books under my belt and I'm about 15,000 words into a third one. I have people that are reading the books that are pressuring me to get that next book out.
Great.
So that's what I call good news, bad news. But the good news is, people want to read what I'm writing. So, as I said, and the other fringe benefit is getting an email from somebody in South Africa that could relate to the dog rescue book, because they have the same breed. They got their dog. It was being abused. I mean, it's just kind of like like you with with doing what we're doing now. Mm-hmm. It's like connecting with people in a positive way, and I'm certainly not naive about the internet. There's a lot of bad about it, but there's also a lot of good. So it's like, it's like the rest of life off the internet. You got to search out what's good and, avoid the bad.
Exactly.
I mean, I've contacted people in the United Kingdom. Just people I would have never in a million years known existed, let alone having conversations with them. There's a lot of dog pages on Facebook. I mean, there's pages. And part of the marketing is not to market, as I found out. People, you have to, I always look at the about on a Facebook page to see what they are about. And what I found was that hanging out and adding something meaningful to the conversation brings benefits that if I'm saying buy my book every 5 minutes, it's going to turn people off.
Exactly. And like I said, when I said that you're going to find out that we all have a lot in common, about one of our mottos here is sell by not selling. So it's the same thing. We don't want to be out there, hey, let us paint your walls, or let us do this, let us do that. No, we want to do exactly what you just said. You want to go on and add something of value. And
let them volunteer to be a customer.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm running out of ideas, Ryan.
I have lots of questions for you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and we're going to get past the books too, and I just want to talk about you.
Sure.
Could you tell me briefly about your 2 books in summary, so people can go check them out? And I'm going to put the links up for everybody as well.
Lance the Spirit Unbroken is the story of I say an unusual. I felt it was an unusual rescue. So did my wife, and I'm seeing from readers it is too. This dog. This dog lived outside 24/7 for 10 years in a town called, you may be familiar with it, Mount Bethel?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's in Pennsylvania. Yep.
Yep. So the last 3 of those 10 years, I had moved into the neighborhood. And I realized the dog, it didn't take long for me to realize, back in those days when I had both my original hips, I was a long distance runner. I used to jog through the neighborhood and then enter races on the weekend. I'd go by and, after a couple of weeks, I realized, this dog is outside all the time. I felt bad about it, but, it's not my dog. So one day I'm walking out to my car and a woman says, you want to adopt a dog? And I said to her, well, not really, but if I did, it'd be that poor dog up the street. And she said, this is that dog. She was walking him. Oh. I have very bad vision, so I had to focus in. I said, yeah, it looks like him. So the first thing I wanted to ask her is, why do you keep your dog outside? It was a very strange setup. She wasn't the dog's owner. She was a neighbor. The owners had kicked him out. He was one of those famous buy a dog for Christmas and then nobody wants him after Christmas. Mm-hmm. So he was weeks old when they kicked him out, and she took it upon herself to have her husband build a doghouse on the owner's property. She would bring cooked food, stews and soups, and bring him to him, but he remained outside on the owner's property. So I said to her, well, you think they'd mind if I walked them once in a while? And she said they could care really less what you did with them. So I started walking them. I had this initial creepy meeting with the owner of the dog. And after that, I just bought my own leash and I just went to the property, hooked them up, and we took off. Very energetic dog. I didn't really know what border collies were. I always kind of thought collie means lassie. They're hyper intelligent, hyper dynamic, tons of energy. I mean, this dog was 10 going on 11, and he was like a year-old dog. So we got into all kinds of mischief, which I can't give it all away, of course, but part of it is because him. Part of it is, frankly, and I admit in the book, I have a reckless streak. And some people have called me on some of the things I did, but you put something out there, you put it out there.
Exactly.
So as fate would have it, one day I heard the owner and his son joking about nuking their dog. And I went back home to my wife and I said, hey man, this dog can't die under my watch. I mean, what if I show up there and the doghouse is gone and none of your business. So we pulled off a rescue. they didn't want to give the dog up. That's a whole other, well, that's part of the story, you know, but we got him. He turned out to be semi-feral, meaning he really couldn't be trusted. My wife still has scars from the adventure. So the story didn't end with the rescue. In a way, it began. The other book, Arthur the Beginning, is a work of historical fiction, meaning it's presented as fiction, but in an era that I've tried to describe as accurately as possible as far as places, dates, events, etc. I'm not going to say who the book is based on. I'll just say that if you read Lance of Spirit Unbroken, you have a pretty good idea.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put those links up, but definitely everybody go check out these books. So about you. So,
sure.
What would you woke up today? What would you say is a perfect day for Walter? What is just the perfect day?
Well, maybe this was a perfect day. I've had writer's block for about 2 weeks. And when I woke up today, I said, you can't let today go by without writing X number of words. And actually, I got that done this morning.
Great.
So speaking as a writer, that's the perfect day. That's a really good question, though, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Because life isn't all about writing. I think what makes a day perfect is less what happens in that day, but more my attitude. In other words, if I'm having a day where I'm rehashing everything that has, could, or will go wrong, I'm not going to have a good day. If I'm having a day where I'm starting to appreciate little things in my life, then that's in a way is a perfect day.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you have to be grateful with
that's
for all the little things going around. Is there one skill that you would still love to learn that you haven't tried?
One skill? Well, I guess I don't know if it's a skill. I just would like to get more and more proficient with a computer,
okay.
which in a way happens in increments every day because I'm usually learning something today that I didn't know yesterday. I've gotten to the point where I'm not hiring people as often as I used to figure things out on the computer for me. So I would say to continue honing my skills in that respect. And I just joined a group called Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was funny. I was trying to talk myself out of going to it. After I went to the first meeting, I said, you know, you're a pretty good speaker, speaking to myself, as I often do. But then I said to myself, no matter how good you are, you could probably be better. So, and since I am trying to get public speaking appearances, I do one with a PowerPoint presentation on dogs. The other one I do is kind of telling my journey as a writer. I just think that this Toastmasters Club can just make whatever my presentation is now, make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get back to you if I was right.
I'm sure you'll be fine. I mean, you jumped in and wrote a book without really thinking about it.
Yes.
Has there been one person or people who've helped you through your writing career? Or have you done it on your own?
Well, I would say persons. I would say the single biggest impact was the critiquing group I joined. So that's a number of people. They changed my writing style. It is my writing style, but it was their feedback. The first thing they told me was, Walter, get all the big words out. You know, I'm more well-read in nonfiction than fiction. So I thought the deal is, you make it like very professorial, use big words to impress people. And I remember one of the people in the group saying, Walter, sometimes I feel like I'm reading a thesis. So I had to, swallow my pride, take out the big words. And the other thing I did is I just got more conversational in my writing. I guess maybe a little bit more everyday, down to earth kind of. And it's funny because I've had a number of readers tell me my books are a very easy read. I don't think they would have been without the critiquing group.
So last question. This is probably going to be a good one for people. Kids just getting out of college, they want to be a writer. That's been their dream. The writing business is tough, as you told us, and I was like, I know. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to stop dreaming and start doing. There's no, in a way, I might be saying that to you too, Ryan. There's no. For 2 weeks, I didn't write anything. What did I do different today? I picked up a pad and pen. I would have felt pretty stupid sitting in my recliner with a pad and pen and not writing anything. So the minute I took that step, I was doomed to write something today. In the presentation I gave to the kids in high school, and they came up with some great questions like, writer's block. They feel like everything's been written. I mean, they had good questions. And what I tried to impress upon them was that my only regret was waiting to this point in my life to start writing. I can't dwell on, the fact that I did waste a lot of time. I just have to go from today on. But the thing they have over me is their youth. And they should, youth goes by. So while they've got it, and for a college, if I was going to recommend one thing, it would be to join a critiquing group. And the reason I say that is it forces you to write. You have to come up with material, once a month, twice a month. It just forces you to do what you might otherwise not have done.
Right. Well, I appreciate it. I say the same thing. Don't keep planning and trying to perfect it. Just get it out there. So that's perfect. And I hope everybody just listens to what you just said. So I appreciate it, Walter. You did a great job, and you gave a lot of great insight for there. I'm going to put the link to your website, which is walterstoffelauthor.com, and then we'll put the links to your books on here. So that's it. I mean, you did a great job. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful talking to you, and we'll talk again.